Welcome to Meet the Thriller Author, a podcast that features interviews with thriller authors. My name is Alan Petersen, and I am your host. I write and publish thrillers. I've been a fan of the genre for as long as I can remember. So when I decided to start a podcast where I would be interviewing other authors, I decided to focus in the thriller genre. In this episode, we're going to be meeting Cheryl Bradshaw, who is a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author. She writes mysteries, thrillers, romantic suspense, and in paranormal suspense. And she's the force behind popular series like the Sloane Monroe series and the Addison Lockhart series. So let's meet Cheryl Bradshaw. Cheryl, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you are very welcome. I thank you so much for coming on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
I grew up in California, currently live in Utah, and I've been writing for only about 5 years, but have been I wanted to get into publishing and publishing a book for over 20 years. So it's been a little bit of a long road, which has finally caught up to me.
Do you start out on with the traditional publishing or indie, or do you do both?
I'm currently hybrid. I started out indie. I originally was like, I'm not going to go indie. I'm not going to do that. And I had at the time I had a blog for writers where I would have people guest post, mostly traditional authors at that time were guest posting, and I was asking them, one question I would always ask is to share some of their advice for new and up and coming authors, which was really great for me too, because I was just starting to get into the business side of things. And one of them just really pushed hard for me to not really go the traditional route at first, or at least to publish indie first while I was still going the traditional route. And that led to me getting an agent a couple of years ago, basically on the merits of my books and how well they did. I didn't really have to seek out an agent or a publishing house or anything like that. It kind of came to me.
What finally was what inspired you to do your first book?
What inspired me was that I moved to Wyoming, and I'd gotten married to someone who was from Wyoming, and the town was really small, and there wasn't a lot to do there, and I thought, I'm not used to not being active and working, and I've just come from selling real estate in Park City. I'd actually started writing the book while I was doing that, but it was just more of a dabbling kind of thing. And then when I got settled into Wyoming, I thought, I'm just going to knock this baby out and see what happens. And so that's what I did.
Oh, wow. And you end up publishing that book?
I did it. That book took me a year to write because I spent so much time researching. I just really felt at the time that I needed to spend a lot of time brushing up on the rules again of writing and of my genre, and just kind of spent a lot of time reading. And so it took more time than my books take now, but it was definitely worth the wait.
Do you read thrillers before you started to write thrillers and suspense novels?
Yes, I would say what I read I read a lot of different genres in mystery, thriller, and suspense. I kind of go back and forth between mysteries and thrillers, but I grew up reading Agatha Christie's. I have some of her first editions on my shelf. I probably have about 75% of the books she wrote in her lifetime.
Wow.
Like print books. And I also like Robert B. Parker. And they're both a little bit more of a mystery. And as far as like an indie, now I would say traditionally published now, I really like Blake Crouch. And so those are my influences, past and present.
And where do you get your ideas for your books?
I get my ideas everywhere. I'm kind of addicted to the Investigate Discovery channel, the ID channel.
I love that channel.
I know. I've probably seen every episode of Forensic Files, and there are a lot of episodes. And so I do. I probably watch a lot of the type of things that I write, whether it's lighter or darker, more, like all kinds of shows that as long as it's a good show. And then usually it's not the idea that they present maybe in an episode, but I'll watch something and say, okay, I could make this kind of twist and do it this way, and I can write that. So it's a little different, but especially when it comes into forensics, which is really fascinating to me. I will pause a show and take notes if I think it's something forensically I might use later, so that I know that I will get that right. I really like adding in forensics, kind of sprinkling that into my stories, no matter what I'm writing.
And do you find that movies, television, and pop culture, do they influence your writing and your novels?
Definitely, definitely, and they definitely give me inspiration. I could be writing about something, and then I've got the plot going and everything going, and then I might see something. Usually, it's more along the lines of something on to investigate, discovery. It's like maybe something like on Deadly Sins or something, where it's something that really happened in real life, and I think, oh my gosh, I could totally make my story richer by adding this extra twist. So I do get ideas based on that, and I find that pretty fascinating.
And I was noticing that you have several series out. You have like the Sloan Monroe series and the Addison Lockhart. Do you work on all of these series at the same time, or do you just focus on one and then move on to the next one, or do you mix them up a little bit?
Well, it's kind of crazy what's happening right now, because I mean, my main series is the Sloan Monroe series, and I've kind of taken a break from that to do some other things. I tried my hand at a standalone to see how that would do, and right now I'm almost finished with a novel that is the first in a new series, and then right after that gets done, I have another first in another new series, and that's probably going to be the end of new series for a while, because that'll be 4. But then between those, I'll probably go back and forth. Like, I have a list of like how I need to write and in what order I need to go on, but I will say that sometimes I'm writing 2 different books at the same time.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It's kind of, I have to really keep my head wrapped in it. If not, it starts to get a little fuzzy. But if I'm having a hard time with a chapter on one of the stories, it's just an easy thing for me to just go, okay, well, this isn't working. I've been sitting here for a while. I'm wasting my time. Let's open up this other one and see if that comes to me a little bit easier today.
And you said you have a standalone novel out. Have you noticed a difference between the reader-fan interaction in comparison to a series?
I feel like my fans overall accepted it really well. It was a little bit more of a romantic suspense than a darker mystery or thriller. And I'm always wanting to try something a little bit new. And it was received pretty well for the most part. I still think the darker, more grittier stories are probably more me than anything else, and I think that they resonate better with my fan base.
And do you base any of your real life find its way into your novels?
I do. And I will say that I try not to make it, I don't like to make an experience that I have had or that I've witnessed, either myself go through or somebody that I know. I don't like to take the same exact situation. So I might twist it into like maybe the same, I guess the best way to describe it is the emotions are probably the same in a completely different situation. So I don't like to take it from real life as far as making like the same, putting exactly what happened word for word as it happened, something that I have experienced or anything like that. but I might take the feelings from that experience, and then when it fits into a character's emotions, maybe in something they're dealing with, then I will draw on that and I will put that in the story based on what she or he is going through in the story.
So if the listeners haven't read your books before, can you tell us just a little bit about them? What they're about, like with your different series?
Right. So my main two series, like we were talking about, Slow Monroe is the main. There's 6 books in that series. She is a female protagonist, private investigator. She's very kind of refined, and she has OCD, and she's dealing with some struggles from her past, which come out over time in the books. She kind of moves around and can't really settle in one place or the other. There's always an underlying murder that she is trying to solve. No matter what I write, there's always a murder that's going to be solved. The other series has 2 books in it. That's Addison Lockhart. That's more of a supernatural suspense, like a ghost story series. I like that also because I can get away with a lot. I could play around with a lot of supernatural elements that, since it's fantasy in a way, I can get away with saying whatever I want. So, because it's a fantasy world. So she's more of a medium. If she touches something, whether it's a person or an object, she can draw from maybe their past or their future, or something that's going to happen or something that has happened. And again, it does tie to a murder mystery. Like I said, everything that I write, there is always a murder undertone, whether it's a darker mystery or thriller or lighter. And so that's what ties all my series together, is death, basically. But in different ways. Like obviously my characters have very different personalities. But in the end, they are all trying to solve these murders.
Great covers too. I'm looking at your covers from the Addison Lockhart. Also, that doll is kind of
I know, she's
creeping me out.
I had a completely different cover. That's what's so fun about covers sometimes, is I had a completely different cover in the beginning with 2 twins that were like holding hands, because it's kind of about 2 twin girls, or a twin girl that dies, and so there's a mystery. It's like goes back in time. But I usually will do my cover about halfway through the book. But by about the end, I just felt it just wasn't right. I needed to focus on something else. And so I thought, what else, will work with this book? And I thought, well, the whole thing is about, there's a doll that the girl is trying to get out the window to get. It's been thrown on the roof and she falls. Like I said, it kind of goes way back in time, and this was in my Addison Lockhart, the paranormal series, and so it's kind of more of a ghost-like apparition. She comes back, but the doll has a big part to do with it, and so that was really fun. And I love to mess with covers. I'm really picky, and I don't mind changing covers. I think I've changed a couple of my covers. My second cover I've changed 3 times.
Oh wow.
I love to only do it one time, one and done. I'm more for like, this is it, let's just be done. But in my first books, I did find that I needed to go back and go, okay, those don't look as good as the newer ones. So I did make changes where changes were needed. Even in my box sets, I had like a 3D stuff going on, and they looked nice, but now I wanted more of a polished look where they all kind of connected to each other, and so I just redid those last month. I love doing that. And
do you do your own the work, or do you hire somebody?
I do not. I hire somebody for everything. And my hand is definitely in all the cookie jars, but like I always have a lot of input and final say, but I have a whole team for everything that I do.
Well, that's good. That way we can focus on the writing, right?
Yes, exactly. At least that's the whole idea. It's just the focusing doesn't always, you know how it is. It doesn't come when you want it to.
Yeah. So, what are some of the challenges that you find when you're beginning to write?
I feel like the challenges don't really come at all in the beginning because usually when I'm first starting the first couple of chapters, I have a pretty good idea of what I want to do in those first couple chapters, and I spend especially a lot of time on that first chapter trying to just make it the best it can be. The hardship comes in that murky middle,
Hmm.
the middle, and I'm kind of like, oh no, should I change this? Is that murder? Like, is it got a good enough twist? Do I need to change that? And then I start questioning things, and then I'm going back. I'm kind of doing that with the book that I'm writing right now. I'm almost done. And about a week ago, I thought, you know what? I know a way to change the killer to someone else and make it better. And so now I'm going all the way back through the whole story. And because of the change I've made, I've had to the chapters stay the same, but I've had to rewrite sections to make it kind of segue into what I'm trying to do now. So these are the fun things that I do that just add more work to my books. But I thought it was better than my original idea, and so I can't ignore that. And then I just cross my fingers that my agent is going to say, "Yeah, I like that. That was better." Instead of, "What are you doing?" Like, what is that?
Yeah, you don't want to hear, why did you change it?
I know. And she'll say too. She's always really nice, but she'll say, I don't know about that villain. I was kind of thinking this person should be the villain. That person has more potential." And I'm like, oh crap. But once you've got a book finished, it's really not that hard to go back and change most things. Just tweak things here and there and keep the same storyline.
And do you usually do you send your agent as you're writing it, or does she get does the person get the final version?
It depends on the book. The last book that I sent her was my standalone that I was trying out, and she did say that she thought the villain should be somebody else. And so I said, well, that was actually my second pick for villain. And she said, these are my reasons why this person should be the villain over this person. I think it would be a richer story if you did that. And it really wasn't very hard to change, actually, because you figure your villain's already weaved into the story, so it's going to be somebody that she's already read about. But I really value her input, and usually, I mean, everything she says makes my stories better. And so, and I've never really disagreed and said, like, no, it has to be this way. I've never felt that passionate about it so far. I felt like, you know what, I see what you mean. I'm going to go back and change that.
Oh, that's awesome that you have that you're both in tune like that you can work together that well.
Yeah, she's pretty great.
Where do you usually write?
So I moved to Utah a few months ago, and so right now I'm writing all over the place. So my desk just came like a few days ago.
Oh, wow.
So I am sitting at it now. Finally, today's the first day, but I have been writing everywhere, on the sofa, on the bed, wherever I can write. So I don't like it. I prefer to write at a desk. I feel it makes me feel like I'm more in work mode. And so that would be where I try to write.
And do you use like a writing software, or do you just use Word?
I just use Word, and I just, pound it out, and then I send it off to my editing team, and then they can do whatever they want. And I don't worry about it. I like Word. It's easy for me, so that's what I go with.
And what's your writing process? Are you like a big plotter, or do you just kind of go along, make it up as you go along?
Yeah, well, when I wrote my very first book, I had an entire outline planned because I thought that was like just the best thing. I'm kind of the type of person that makes lists, and I'm good with lists. But for me, it took away from the freshness of the quality of what I was trying to produce. And sometimes when I sit down, so I don't do that now. So instead, what I do is I know what's going to happen in the beginning. I usually have an idea of what's going to happen in the end, but I really don't know how the rest of those 50,000 pages are going to happen. They just kind of come to me, and I let the story go where it needs to go. And what I have found by doing that, because it's just so out of my comfort zone, but I found that some of the surprises in the book and the twists are almost as refreshing to me, even though I realize they're going to happen, as I'm hoping the writer reads them, something they did not expect. Because I could sit down and think of something as I'm writing, go, oh my gosh, that is fantastic. Like I think that would be a really good twist right here. And whereas an hour before that, I had no idea that I was going to do that. And I almost feel like it keeps all of it a lot fresher than me just going, okay, this is what the plot line is. This is kind of what's supposed to happen today in this scene. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, sounds like it's more a little more fun for you as a writer too.
Yeah, it is. I'm like, wow, who knew that character wanted to do that today? Okay.
And I know this is a hard question because I ask this question, and sometimes people are they're like, "Oh, there is no typical day." But can you describe like what a writing day would be for you when you're in the zone when you're writing?
So a normal writing day, which I wish most of my days were a normal writing day, and they're not because things always come up on the business end, and I love the business part of it and the promoting side of it. I just wish I could write more. I think every writer feels that way. But I start my day going through emails. If I have fan mail, I need to write back. I always want to do that. I try to keep that within 24 hours if I can. And I touch bases with my assistant. What is she working on? And what would I like her to work on? And whatever she's doing. It could be a multitude of like different kinds of things. I check all of my social media, and then I try to get off of it. Trying is a good word because it doesn't, I get sucked into that vortex. But I usually when I start writing, I try to write for at least 4 hours straight. I might break to like get up and have, my 6th cup of tea for the day. But I try to get up about every hour and just walk around. But I like to write for a bulky period of time. Most of my friends and family are conditioned now that, between this hour and this hour, I'm probably not going to write back unless it's an emergency.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's good at training them.
When your mind, I find that if the phone rings and it's whoever, like maybe not friends and family, but just a random phone call, my head comes right out of the story so fast that sometimes I can't, I'm on a roll and I cannot go back after. And so I do everything I can to keep it really solid until like that chapter is finished or that idea is finished. Sometimes they answer the phone and say, hold on, whatever I have to do, I'll be right back, just a second.
Yeah, it's amazing how it just really does suck you right out of it.
Oh gosh, it really does. And it's the same goes for, like, one of the things I always say for advice for writers is try not to go more than a day or two. Even if you write for 15 minutes, try to keep your mind in your whip, like your current book that you're writing. Even if you just are in it for a minute. It's amazing the more days I go, like Christmas is going to be a good example. I will have to take a break for a while, which it's not have to, like I don't want to. I just have about a week and a half to 2 weeks that family's going to be around, and I know that's coming up, and so I'm working really hard on deadlines right now because but it is hard. If I can get that book finished, then I won't have to worry about that. But if I take a break and I try to come back to the book after a while, it's very hard.
Are your deadlines self-imposed, or are those coming from your agent?
I, in the past, have been really good at keeping my deadlines. I usually make them for myself and then give some tentative deadline dates to my agent, like here's when I think this is going to be finished. But, we all have those years where everything that could possibly happen to you in your life that you didn't think was going to happen happens. And that was my year this year. And so I'm just going, okay, I just want to have a break now, get back to work. And so now that I'm kind of settled in, I'm really trying to just make up for lost time. Normally, I am excellent with deadlines. Right now, I'm running a little behind, and that's okay.
Yep, exactly. Things happen. And can you tell us a little bit about your current work in progress?
So right now I am writing the first, like I said, in a new series. Her name is Josh Jacks. She hosts her own. I'm really addicted to the Investigate Discovery Channel. She's a former medical examiner who really just did not like being in like her stuffy lab, and she has kind of given that up to host a show which deals with the most recent murders, serial killers, anything that's like a conspiracy. And she just happens to find herself at the beginning of this book in New Orleans, and she's at a book signing for an author that writes true crime. And it's kind of like a celebration of a 25 years since a serial killer he was electrocuted in the death chair. So she's doing the last signing. The author is doing the last signing, and Joss is there. She gets her book signed, and then next morning she finds out that this author has been murdered, and it all kind of stems from this book that the author was writing that was really pretty secretive. She didn't say a lot to her agent. She didn't tell a lot of people about it. And so the whole idea is, who was she writing about, and what problems did that cause that led to her murder? So it opens up a whole bunch of different avenues. And so in the midst of that, you're also getting to know Joss, because it's book one in this series, and her background and what brought her where she is right now. So this is the most complex book I've ever written, because it really goes back. It goes back in time between the 80s and now, because what happens to what happens to the true crime writer stems from something from the past that she is now writing and trying to keep under wraps. Something she's kind of been piecing together about a serial killer who she thought kind of got a bad rap that she had previously written about. So it's just it's definitely has the most pieces that I've ever had to try to put together and make flow right. Going back and forth in time is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about time jumps, how you handle those.
I'm trying to make sure that the dates are right and the wording is right for that time. Like the 80s, obviously, it's a little different, and that would have been said, and the fashion, and if I'm describing anything, that is it just on point. But I also think, after bashing my head in a few times over it's a little bit hard to go back and forth in time. It definitely adds an element that I have not done before, and I'm always trying to try something new and just see what I can do with it. And so I am really excited about it. I think once it's done and it all comes together, I do believe that I'll be very happy with it, and I hope that it resonates well with my readers.
Well, it sounds like an excellent plot, so it's gonna be exciting. When do you think it'll be out?
Well, the hard part about that is that this will go to my agent, and that will be a process. So it just depends on what happens with it. If it gets offers, and then if it doesn't get offers in the U.S., then it'll go out for foreign offers. And so the soonest I would be able to release it, if I didn't accept an offer, would be at least 6 months. And then at that point, it starts going out for foreign. And so it's kind of hard, because this one will take some time. So what I do is I go back and forth. So it's with my agent, I give her anything that's a full-length novel. But if I write some, like I'm also writing the other series I'm writing in 2016 is a novella series. It's a little bit longer of a novella series, but that is something I can put out on my own. And so it's the way that I can keep my readers reading something while they're waiting on the other one.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's kind of like a in between. Yeah.
So I take turns.
Yeah.
It's sort of like one for you, one for the family, one for you, one for the so, I had hoped to move that along a little bit more this year and get it finished. I actually wanted to have it finished before now, but we're back on task, so that's good.
That's good. So do you still? I mean, such a busy schedule. Do you still find time to read?
I do. I read at night when I'm winding down, and I mostly read what I write because that's what's most fascinating to me. So I'm usually always reading two different things: one nonfiction and one fiction. And the fiction is almost always mystery or thriller. So right now I'm reading. Let me see. I'm reading James Patterson's Hope to Die. I'm almost done with that. And so, like, one night I'll read fiction, and then maybe the next night I'll read nonfiction. And nonfiction, I like to read, like, inspirational books. So, like, I'm also reading Joel Osteen's Breakout. So I just like all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's inspiring. And I love to keep up with the thrillers too. I'm kind of waiting for Blake Crouch's new book to come out, which I think is going to be some time. And so I'm reading some of my other author friends in the meantime.
What did you think of this TV show? I can't believe it. I'm drawing a blank.
Wayward Pines?
Yes.
I liked it a lot. I liked that there were some changes from the book, but not in the way that most people will talk about and go, oh, I didn't like it because everything was different. It wasn't like that at all. I found that a lot of it was very similar to, and in the same vein of the way that he wrote it. And it's just funny seeing it on the screen, like when he talked about, what the creatures look like, behind the fence. I had pictured something completely different in my mind than what they look like.
Yeah.
So like, oh, that's different. I was kind of picturing more of like the Velociraptor person, I don't know.
Yeah, it was more like an alien kind of look in the TV show.
Did, and so I was all, oh, so that wasn't what I was thinking they were going to look like. So I did actually like that. It was, and I have to say that I'm very picky about characters. Like when they announce, like, oh, this book is, maybe going to have, these are the actors that are going to play the roles. We all do this. Half the time we're like, what? I didn't see that person being that person. But I felt like the characters were excellent, and they were, for the most part, exactly how I pictured they would behave and act, and they were all like right on point for me. So I loved it. I thought it was a great series. All of my friends loved the series, and I was really impressed with how it turned out.
Yeah, it was good. It's a big hit, so they'll probably do another one now.
Yeah, I know he's working on something new, and it does tie into the book that I believe it's finished, but I know that he's on set working on something new. And I'm excited for that. He said he's going to be talking a little more about that pretty soon, and I think that will probably be great. It was great that he teamed up with M. Night Shyamalan for Wayward Pines. I totally could see that as a fan of that kind of stuff, and Twin Peaks and The Twilight Zone. That totally fit into the vibe that you needed to get off that show. Anyway, it was very exciting.
Yeah, I was excited. Okay, well, do you have anything you would like to say to our listeners before I let you go?
That I appreciate everybody that takes the time to just read our genre and and appreciate what we're trying to do, and I love interacting with fans, and just I love the excitement that what we're trying to portray in our books how it comes across to everybody else, especially when you get that email that says, I love this book, and it's not like it touches them in a profound way as far as because they're murder mysteries, but what I get a lot is I'm dealing with this issue in my life, and it just made me escape that for a while and be able to just get engrossed in a book, and that means everything to me.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, it helps people get their minds off their life, their problems in their lives.
Yeah, even if they're reading about something that's not maybe completely heartfelt, it still has so much emotions there that I think it just sweeps them up into a world where they can just not worry about all the pressures of daily life, and I love that. I will provide that as long as I can.
And where can readers find you? I'm assuming you're on Facebook. You're pretty active on Facebook and Twitter and everything.
I'm almost everything is literally under my name. So CherylBradshaw.com. Cheryl Bradshaw author page is Facebook. Twitter is Cheryl Bradshaw. Almost everything I'm under. I kind of did it right in the beginning. There are 2 other Cheryl Bradshaws now, 2 or 3 actually, but I got in there right at the beginning. So it was
because you claimed your real estate property there.
I was thinking, what have I missed? I try to be just a solid name whenever I can. I know it's hard for some authors, but you can find me pretty easily. You can even Google Cheryl Bradshaw. My website comes right up.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Cheryl, for being on the show. It's real nice talking to you about your work and your writing.
Thank you, too. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Meet the Thriller Author. You can visit our site at get.thrillingreads.com/podcast for more information on our podcasts. And you can also subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcatcher, like iTunes, the most popular one, of course. Just search for Meet the Thriller Author and you'll find me there. And I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/Meet Thriller Author. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your comments and your feedbacks on the shows. And I'll have a new podcast, new interview with a thriller author. They'll be posting them every Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. And don't forget to subscribe. And please visit my author website at alanpetersen.com.